Guys, today we're gonna be back to today's story. I talked so fast. Yeah, I'm a rapper. Just packing. But when I saw you talking, I thought you were talking. Yeah. Anyways.
15 when I got my first job as a gas station cashier to help out my single mom. My dad ran away, so I knew I needed to step up. But on my first day, a man in a mask and firearm stormed in at 2 a.m. He yelled, "Hand over the money," and I immediately knew I wasn't getting paid enough for this. My hands trembled with fear as I pressed the cash into his palm and pressed the silent alarm under the desk. But then he immediately gave me back everything except one single $50 bill. I was still shaking when he lowered his firearm. "I'm sorry, but it's my son's 16th birthday in a few days. I haven't seen him since he was a baby, so I want to send the $50 to his mom, and maybe she can pass it on to him. That's why I'm doing this." I felt bad, so I replied, "I'm sure his son would appreciate that." But then the man instantly hung his head. "That boy is the only reason I keep trying in this life. Maybe one day I'll find him, and he'll be open to accepting me as his dad." I saw tears form in his eyes, and a strange feeling hit my chest as I thought about how the police were coming. I told him I was 15 just like his son, and didn't have a dad either, and most nights I still sat on the porch waiting for him to come back. His lips trembled as he nodded and went to leave, but when he turned around, I noticed a few strands of ginger hair sticking out from the bottom of his mask. I told myself it couldn't be him, but still called out, "Wait!" The man turned, and I asked him if he has a scar on his knee. "How do you know that?" he replied. I felt tears forming as I asked if his son was named Michael. His mouth flew open and he nodded. I gripped my head. "I'm Michael." The man immediately pulled off his mask, and that's when police walked in. They cuffed him and started walking him out, and tears fell from his eyes. I knew I couldn't let this happen, and immediately ran over the counter, my heart pounding. I clicked the alarm on accident, I yelled to the officers. "He's not here to rob me." They looked at me, looked at the man, and I pulled a picture from my wallet. The only picture I had of me and my dad. The man in front of me looked just like the man in the picture. The officers took one look at it, nodded, and left. I cried staring at him, and suddenly felt my throat closing. "Dad." His lip quivered as he gripped my shoulder. "Son." We pulled each other into a hug and sobbed. I found my dad when he tried to rob me. Me and my
might be true. This might be better than Jack D. Friends.
were hauling treasure chests across the ocean when we heard a scream. I dropped the rope I was holding in shock. I hollered, "Pirates incoming! Keep the Queen's gold safe!" My entire crew scrambled to protect the treasure chests, while the ship slammed into our side, hooks bit our rail, and dozens of pirates poured onto our deck screaming at the top of their lungs. They tied us up and held us down to poles on the ship, and their biggest man hauled our first chest into the sunlight, wedged his axe under the lid, and cracked the seal open. My whole body froze with fear, because the gold belonged to the Queen, and if they stole it, the Queen's navy would hunt down this ship and hang every last one of us. Their captain strolled through the spilled gold. "The booty's mine, the ship's mine." He pointed at me and the other strongest men on the ship. "Get these dogs row for me now." His crew started unchaining us, and I raised my voice over their laughter. "Put it back, all of it. Sail away, and hope that Her Majesty never learns your names." The captain crouched down and pointed his hook at me. "Make him walk the plank." I gulped and tried my best to stay calm. A pirate pulled me up by the shoulders and shoved me towards a plank. He pointed at the ocean. "She's real feisty today. She'll have you dead in no time." My entire crew was forced to watch as I slowly put one foot in front of the other. The captain grinned. "Dead men tell no tales." And while my left foot hovered over the icy water, I heard screaming behind me. I turned around and their lookout shrieked, "Sail ho! The Queen's Navy is here!" A warship 5 times our size filled the horizon. It had cannons locked and loaded and was ready to kill us all. The captain's grin died and he shrieked, "Put it back! Put it all back!" And grown pirates started shoveling doubloons into chests with their bare hands. One pirate knelt on the deck, pressing 2 halves of a seal back together, and I leaned my head against the mast. "You can't unbreak a seal." He took out a gun and got ready to turn it inwards. Me and my sea crew were hauling treasure chests across the ocean when we heard a scream. I dropped the rope I was holding in shock. A little kid came into my store, but the second he saw me, he froze and started trembling uncontrollably. I felt bad because I knew my prison tattoos terrified him, and his legs shook as he slowly walked over. He pointed at the bag of blue Sour Patch behind me, so nervous he couldn't look me in the eye. His voice shook as he asked for the price, but when I placed the bag on the counter, he immediately snatched it. "I'm so sorry for this, sir." He began sprinting out the door with the Sour Patch, his legs still shaking, but I just reached under my desk and calmly pressed the the anti-theft button. The front entrance doors locked, and he stopped dead. His eyes went wide, and he tried prying the doors open, straining as hard as he could. I calmly walked over and towered over him. Pee began running down his leg when he turned around because he was so scared. He dropped the bag of Sour Patch and covered his face, crying, "I'm sorry, I didn't want to do this." I looked at him and felt like something deeper was going on, because he didn't look like the petty theft delinquent type. I knelt down and asked him why he stole from my store. He was still crying, and between choking sobs he said, "My big sister is dying at the hospital. My parents spent all the money on her treatment, and I just wanted her to have her favorite candy one last time." He looked up at me. "I'm a good kid, I swear, I just didn't know what to do." I felt my heart break as I picked up the Sour Patch and pressed it into his hands while he sobbed. I walked him to the hospital, then watched him give her the Sour Patch, and realized he wasn't a bad kid. He was just doing a little wrong so he could do a lot right. A little kid came into my store, but the second he saw me, he froze and started trembling uncontrollably. I felt bad. The fat kid in town took off his hoodie and started climbing the diving board. "I'm gonna jump." He reached the highest board and put his hands behind his back, but my eyes widened when I saw my daughter in her floaty right under him. I yelled no and lunged to remove her, but his stomach was already hurtling through the air like an atomic bomb. He hit the water so hard I felt a shockwave, and half the water in the pool instantly cleared out. He stood up in the remaining water smiling, fists at his hips like he was proud. But then my daughter's floaty came up beside him, and I saw she wasn't in it. I instantly panicked and dove under the water, but she wasn't anywhere. I came up gasping and clenched my fists, wondering how this dessert lover made my daughter disappear by falling on her. I grabbed his shoulders and shook him. "Where's my daughter?" He picked up her empty floaty, and his jaw dropped when he saw his stomach imprint where my daughter was. He immediately started splashing everywhere looking for her, screaming, "Not again," while I got out to go look. She wasn't in the bushes. She wasn't with the other kids crying because of what they just saw. She had vanished because of his stomach flabs, but then I tripped over something. I looked down and realized it was the kid's quadruple XL hoodie. I was so angry at him I went to kick it, but then his fat hand blocked my leg. "Don't touch my stuff. I know you're angry, but we'll find her." He yanked his hoodie up, and that's when my jaw dropped. My daughter was right there under his hoodie, soaking wet but alive. I instantly knelt down and scooped her up. She'd never disappeared. Turns out when the fat kid splashed into the pool, she got caught in the water he cleared out, and the wave carried her out and tangled her under his hoodie. I stood there holding her, thankful she was alive. Then I looked at his chubby grin and pushed him back in. The rest of the water left the pool. The fat kid and my youngest dropped by the campfire screaming and clutching his right side, and we were 2 hours from the nearest hospital. The dispatcher on the phone said no ambulance could reach us for 2 hours, and the appendix was about to rupture. Everyone froze around the fire, but my oldest was already sterilizing the camp knife in the flames. "Dad, I got this. I know what I'm doing. This is my field of expertise, if you will." His mom grabbed his wrist. "You're not cutting a kid open with a camp knife." But I didn't know if we had a choice. I turned to her. "Honey, you know our oldest has ADHD, and he had a hyperfixation with medical textbooks. We have to trust him." My little one's screaming went quiet, and his eyes rolled back, and my wife was trembling. My oldest knelt over him and poured a water bottle on his hands. "Tell me where to cut." The dispatcher's voice broke up through the speaker. "Find the bony point on his right hip. Go 2 inches toward the belly button." But my son's knife was already moving before she finished. He opened a small cut, blood welled up, and his hand stayed dead steady while everyone behind him looked away. A minute later, he lifted something small and red out of the cut, dropped it in the dirt, and my little one's breathing evened out. My wife buried her face in my shoulder. I can't watch. The paramedics reached us an hour later and rushed my youngest into the hospital. The surgeon came out afterward shaking his head. "Whoever took that out in the field did it textbook, cleanest I've ever seen." My oldest looked up from the medical textbook he was reading for fun. "Appendix is one of the easy ones. Let's just be glad it wasn't something like a thoracic aortic dissection repair. Now that I wouldn't have been able to do." My youngest dropped by the
That's a good kid right there.
I broke a world record and became hated for it. My classmate Kaylee was diagnosed with cancer, and the life-saving surgery she needed cost too much for her family to afford. My school organized a marathon to raise money for her, and that's when I announced I would finish the marathon in under 2 hours and break the record to raise more money. Everyone laughed because I couldn't even finish the mile in gym class, but I said I'd spent all summer training with the best runners in Kenya. I repeated this until local news picked it up, and our county mayor showed up to school asking if I was really going to break the record. I said, "I'm doing it for my classmate," and pulled up a video from Fiverr of random guys in Kenya claiming I ran with them in the mountains. He's the best we've ever seen. The mayor immediately announced if I broke the record, he'd fund the surgery. Kaylee looked at me like I was her hero. Now I just had to actually break the record. When race day came, the mayor was at the start line with camera crews. The gun went off and we started running. I sprinted as fast as I could, immediately getting ahead of everyone else as they were going slow, pacing themselves. My heart raced as I sprinted and felt like I would pass out. But then at the 1 mile mark, I saw nobody in my rear view. No reporters, no classmates. Perfect. I quickly ducked off course and into the trees, where Kaylee and her dad were waiting with their car. I got in and we drove off. We spent the next hour eating chips and playing Kaylee's favorite games. Then 1 hour 43 minutes into the race, Kaylee's dad drove me to the bushes 2 miles from the finish line. I quickly checked that nobody was looking and ran back onto the course. I ran as fast as I could for the last 2 miles and came into view of the finish line at 1:57. Even from a distance, I saw everyone's shocked faces and cameras flashing rapidly. I crossed the finish line at 1 hour 59 minutes 45 seconds, exhausted. I collapsed to the floor and the mayor had his hands over his head in shock. The reporters instantly started writing about the teenager who broke the record, and I was still out of breath when the mayor signed a check for the exact amount needed for Kaylee's surgery. She cried tears of joy, and that's when I took the reporter's microphone and told the truth. The sprint at the start, the car, the last 2 miles. Everyone's faces dropped and the mayor turned red. He was about to get angry, but I said, if you want to make me the bad guy for making sure my classmate lived, then so be it. He went silent as me and Kaylee hugged while her dad watched with tears. She had her surgery, and when she woke up, I was right there. The first thing she told me was at least now I hold the world record for the biggest bullshitter. I broke a... My sister gave our 6-year-old brother a Chinese candy bar, and he instantly started dying. Reagan had spent the last 2 years studying Mandarin in Beijing. She sent us pictures with her Chinese host parents and had our dad send her $500 every month for spendings. But when our brother Max pulled a granola bar from her bag and asked, Reagan, what does this mean? She stared at the Chinese symbols with a confused look like she didn't know a single word. My hands instantly trembled because Reagan was a compulsive liar from the day she was born. I watched her stutter, chocolate and oats and honey, and watched Max ask if there were any peanuts. Reagan shook her head. Nope, no peanuts anywhere. But when Max tore it open and took a bite, he instantly started wheezing. His lips swelled and his face turned red as he dropped to the floor. Reagan started freaking out, and when Dad came running and saw the unwrapped candy bar, Reagan instantly threw her hands in the air. I told Max the Chinese candy had peanuts, but he didn't listen. I gripped my head in horror and screamed back, no, Reagan, you read the Chinese writing and told Max it was safe. You've spent 2 years in China. How could you not read if it had peanuts? Reagan went red, but Dad was already on his knees calling the ambulance. At the hospital, Dad gripped Max's hand while I stood over Reagan in the corner. Why didn't you tell Max the candy had peanuts? That's when she broke down and started crying. I never went to Beijing. I spent the last 2 years in Bulgaria with my sugar daddy. I told Max there were no peanuts, so you'd think I learned Chinese and never know where I really was. I gripped my head as I realized she'd risked our brother's life to keep up her lie. Suddenly, Dad's phone dinged. A $25,000 wire transfer from Bulgaria. Reagan looked up through tears. My sugar daddy says sorry. My sister gave our 6-year-old brother a
Okay, so that was the last one. See you next one. Bye.
Chinese candy bar, and he